Do you want to be able to die in peace? Then Simeon would say there's three things you need to be seeking in your life if that's so. The first thing is this. Let's jot this down. Let's dive in. Clearly, Simeon seeks to lead a good life. Simeon seeks to lead a good life. And we mean that literally. Simeon devotes himself to pursuing goodness in his life, to being a good man, a moral man. And we see this in verse 25, where it says Simeon was a righteous and devout man. There are a lot of people today who are seeking to have a rich life, or a safe life, or a happy life. But I wonder how many are seriously trying to lead a good life. I hope you've noticed in these stories we've been studying this Advent that all of the principal players on the stage here that God uses are like Simeon. Remember how Zechariah and Elizabeth were described? They were righteous before God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments. Mary found favor with God. She was a godly woman. Luke hasn't told us much about Joseph, but Matthew describes him as a just man. The shepherds, they must have had faith, because after they saw Jesus, Luke tells us that they returned to their fields rejoicing in God. These guys went to Sunday school. They weren't reprobates. Let's not miss the point here. Nobody is saved by being good. Luke's not saying that, and the Bible is clear on that. Mary has to offer sacrifices for her own sin. But once you take salvation out of the conversation, we can still say, can we not, that there are good people, bad people in this world? Paul told Timothy that there are people who are lawless and disobedient and profane and godless, meaning there are people out there and they are just sold out completely to sin. Goodness is not even on their radar. They could care less about God. And you cross paths with one of these guys, watch out. Jesus said, don't cast your pearl before swine. And it's interesting in the Bible, you never see God revealing himself except in judgment to a reprobate heart. What you do see is God revealing himself all the time to good hearts, like in the Christmas story here. And we see this all the time throughout the Bible. We see this with Gideon. We see this with Hannah, the centurion whose slave Jesus healed. Jesus marveled at him and said, I haven't even seen such faith in all of Israel. The Lord would say to some, you're not far from the kingdom of God. In Acts 10, a man named Cornelius, another centurion, is described. He's not saved yet, but Luke describes him as a devout man who feared God, and he prayed continually. He's not saved, but he's good. And so God dispatches Peter to come to Cornelius to explain to him how to finish the course he's on, the journeys he's on. Even Paul wasn't reprobate. He wasn't godless. He was passionate about God and his laws, though it was completely misdirected. In a salvation sense, we're all evil. Jesus said as much. We're all made of crooked timber, the way the philosopher Immanuel Kant said. But humans are still created in the image of God, and even though that image is broken and cracked into pieces by sin, there are people you and I meet who pick up part of the pieces and they start to put them together, and something jumps inside their heart, and they start looking around and they start looking up, and they want to devote their life to goodness and God too, if they could only find him. And God will move heaven and earth to reveal himself to a heart like that.